Normally, I have a pretty clear idea about like what I don't know. It's hard to explain. Like about what non-duality is, or maybe like what it might feel like to be enlightened or something. But today I was just thinking, I really don't know. Like, what would be the difference when you say boundlessness, experiencing everything, between what it's like for me to just be sitting here now? Like, how would it be any different? I don't know. I was just thinking about that.
Yeah. That's really hard to explain. It's like trying to explain the taste of something, or to explain experiences. It's really complicated. It's basically the end of suffering, so it no longer feels like somebody's having an experience. It's not the end of pain and pleasure, and it's not it's not the end of pain and pleasure, and it's not the end of problems as such, but it's the end of somebody watching this and having an experience. Hello?
Yeah,
Oh, you're still there.
yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I'm just trying to think about that. Okay, so, but how about like, I know, I know that I still feel like a person a lot of the time, but right now, I don't feel like I am someone having an experience, so I still don't see how it's any different.
Well, what do you feel like?
I don't know really. Like, obviously, I can see everything around me that I can see. Sometimes I'm just doing things. I just do things without really thinking. If you know what I mean, things are just happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Also, right now, what's the experience?
the experience.
Yeah.
Um,
Like, what's the sensations in the body? What's the experience of sitting there like?
yeah. The experience is obviously a lot of it is visual. I can hear you. In my body, I suppose I feel like a bit. My stomach sometimes gets a bit of tension and stuff. I can feel that. When I put my attention into my body, I can then feel other things like my feet, my hands, sitting on the chair. Um, but yeah, no, my body feels all right.
So
The
where
experience.
does your edge feel like it is?
This is what I mean. I don't feel like I have an edge at the moment, really. Like, I don't know. I'm not sitting here thinking about myself talking to you. I'm
Yeah.
just sitting here talking to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't really know what to say to that. That's the experience then.
yeah.
So,
Um,
but underneath your question, what are you asking? Are you asking if is it because you feel like you can't trust yourself, or you don't know? Like, where does that question come from? What are you looking for from the answer?
um, well, okay, I wanted to ring in because I've kind of been on this non-duality trail for a long time, and I've always felt like, I'm trying to get somewhere. Um, I can't really either. I don't know. I don't understand why my urge is to ring in, but a lot of the time when I know that you're doing a stream, or sometimes I just think, oh, I'd like to have a session with Lisa or something. So I guess, yeah, maybe I am trying to get somewhere.
But this is where I find
But
it really
also,
hard to connect with you, Sam, because I feel like you're a little cut off from what you're feeling,
yeah,
from what the actual experience is in the body. Try going into the
the
body now
body, yeah,
and see, like, just shut your eyes and see what the actual experience is happening in your body.
yeah. Well, as you said that, like I feel my body, and there's quite tense actually, like especially in the stomach. Tense, maybe a bit nervous or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um,
So just sit and put your attention there for a moment and just relax the body. And then just see if you can ask yourself what it is that you really want.
uh, Obviously, right now, I want to be talking to you, it seems like. But more long term, I'm not so sure.
But not long term. Just go
Yeah,
back into the body and feel it again. Like go underneath
yeah,
wanting to talk to me. What feelings do you have underneath that? Like, so go deeper than wanting to talk to me.
yeah. There is a kind of, before I felt the tension and everything, there's a kind of a, it's kind of like nothing's there. That's the thing. Like, there's a bit of space. Hang on, let me think about the body as well. Um, I've got a fair bit of energy at the moment. I could do lots of things. Um, I guess, yeah, I want to. Maybe I've got this idea about getting rid of a sense of self and waking up. And I guess I'm kind of chasing that.
And why do you want that? So try to go deeper than that. Why do you want that?
I can't feel it right now, but a lot of the time I have a lot of feelings about not liking myself,
Yeah,
things about myself, wanting to be different.
yeah,
So I guess it could be a kind of a way to escape
yeah,
how I feel about myself and want something else.
yeah. Everything is about that, not just non-duality. And I'm not saying in any way that you should stop listening to non-duality. It's beautiful, the exploration of it, and it is the end of suffering. But everybody is seeking, everything that you do is about seeking what you fear you lack or don't have. Everything.
Yeah.
And so basically, everything you do, where it be the way you speak to people or the way you interact with people or listening to non-duality, it's all about adding to yourself because you feel like there's something you haven't got. And that doesn't mean not listening to non-duality or quitting this subject because you suddenly realize that you're doing it in order to get something to complete yourself. But the reason that you're interested is because it gives you something. So therefore you have this dislike for yourself. So therefore you want yourself to disappear. So my talks about there not being a sense of self suit you.
Yeah,
And this is
that makes sense.
always so in everything. So in the lover you pick, the woman that you'll pick is what you lack. You don't actually love them. We say we love you and you complete me. Actually, the completing you is true because what you pick in a woman or what you pick in a partner or a friend is what you feel you don't have. There's also another part about smell, and there is this natural attraction, but it's often you pick someone that validates you and which has qualities which fulfill you in some way, which validate you in some way. It's everything, your job, everything is about that. And if you have low self-esteem, maybe you never go for a job in which you feel like you deserve because the job that you have validates that low self-esteem. Everything is about maintaining the sense of self when you're separate. There isn't any exception for that. Any exception. So if you were to just try and say, I listen to non-duality because I like it, there can be the resonance with it, which is an underlying thing where you resonate with non-duality and you remember yourself. There's moments where you remember yourself, but a lot of the time it will be because it adds something to you. You go away with something. You go away fulfilling something that you feel like you haven't got. So therefore, this is why now I've recently been talking a lot about pointing out feelings, because you can then feel So the separate person, although it's a separate person, can feel what it's actually doing and understand its games. And through those games coming to light, those games begin to fade away. Because when you see that you're using an object to make you feel loved or make you feel special, then that object loses its attractiveness, because you also see that it makes you suffer and you see the downside of it. But it's not even you doing it. It just is, it just comes to light and it just gets cleared, just like, Khaleesi, when she realizes if she keeps chasing the rabbit, she gets told off by me, she eventually stops doing that. So when you see the pain that it brings by trying to validate yourself in the flow of things, and that it never works, so when this comes to light, the energy stops going there and stops trying to do it. When you secretly feel it's giving it to something to you, and you're not conscious of the dynamics, and you really feel like the lover or non-duality is giving you something, you as a person, then the game carries on. The idea is that non-duality totally disappears and that the lover disappears. And that's the end of seeking, when you're no longer in relationship to it. It doesn't mean you stop listening to non-duality, but it's just, it's not happening for you anymore. It's not giving you something in time anymore. So
Yeah.
when you go to your feelings, you really begin to understand the dynamics that are playing out and what you're looking for. But
Yeah.
this can be really painful at points, because when you do that, you then have to sit with the pain of feeling not good enough. So rather than going to get validation from someone or get love from someone, you have to actually sit with the pain of it. It just comes up and comes out of the body that you're not enough, you're not loved. You have that low self-esteem. Normally what we do is we're constantly trying to avoid admitting that. Even if we're doing something which validates that low self-esteem, we're doing it so we don't feel it, we don't think about it.
Yeah. Um, so, how is there anything like? Would you recommend just always, for me, maybe to be going into my feelings a lot more,
Going
just
into your feelings,
in
but not
general?
all the time. Also listening to non-duality and recognizing that feelings aren't who you are. Who you truly are is that aliveness which is beyond feelings. But yeah, also becoming as a person, as a separate entity, so that one that feels like it can choose, becoming aware of its feelings. So becoming aware of its own dynamics. Because when you learn that something is burning you, then that energy will stop going there. And it's not you doing it, and it's not you waking up, but it's just like if you keep hitting your head on a low ceiling every day, then eventually, after doing it 10 times, you're just naturally, your body's going to duck every time it gets to that ceiling. And it doesn't belong to anyone, it's just a functioning. When it comes to light, that getting people's approval actually doesn't make you feel good, it makes you feel tense, and it just perpetuates the feeling of lack, or doing something for other people rather than doing what you want to do, because you'd rather get the people's approval than have enough self-respect to do what you feel like you'd like to do, begins to stop happening, because you realize by doing that you actually make yourself feel like you're not enough. You make yourself feel unlovable by selling yourself short and doing something for other people. But it's a natural thing that happens through listening to non-duality and through the exploration of what the self is. And it's not somebody separate that's waking up, but it's life that's waking up. And it does it through, in a way, a logical process by exposing what the separate self is and what it's made of. But there isn't actually somebody that wakes up, because there's nobody there. But it just gets exposed. Not all the time. Sometimes the sense of self just collapses with no exploration. But a lot of the time there's an exploration involved, and there's a period of waking up. But then at the end it's seen that nobody ever woke up, and that person that was deconstructed didn't deconstruct itself, because it never existed. It was never a solid entity.
So, so really, you said a little bit earlier, most of the stuff that I'm still doing now is all basically to get away from like how I feel about myself and
Yeah,
low self-esteem and
yeah,
stuff.
yeah, yeah. That's why you've done the other thing that we've talked about in the past, but I won't say it out on stream like that. That's why you had those other
That's
issues
okay.
arising.
Drugs stuff, yeah.
Oh, you're so sweet, Sam. I love your honesty.
Yeah,
That's me trying to not be too. Yeah, it's because it's because of low self-esteem, but it's not just you, Sam, that has this. This is most of humanity that has this. This is most people, as soon as the identification appears, and then with the society and the way it's set up, the schooling, the education, the advertising, most separate selves have really low self-esteem and don't like themselves. And what you're always taught as a separate entity is not do what you want, not do what you feel. You're taught to be a robot and do what everybody else does and to not speak your mind. And therefore you oppress more and more, and then you end up doing something like drugs, because when you do drugs, you can fully be yourself. You forget about yourself, so therefore you're fully yourself. That's why our society's like alcohol as well. When you lived, like, so if you lived in a tribe or a more primitive society, I don't know if that's the right words, I'm sorry, I might have been really un-PC there, there isn't such an exposure to advertising, TV, internet, and therefore, even though they feel lack because they've become separate, they haven't had such a strong conditioning in it. Our society is totally based on selling us products to make us feel better about ourselves. And most people don't work that out. They spend their whole life trying to achieve and trying to get things. Even enlightenment is sold to us on this basis. And in a way it has to be, because that's the mentality of the seeker. So it has to be sold like, oh, you're going to wake up and there's going to be this amazing waking up and you're not complete as you are now. In a way, because that's the way our language is set up, so we have to speak of it like that. But yeah, basically the reason that you seek, even seeking non-duality, is because of lack. And in a way it has to be like that, and I'm not suggesting stopping non-duality. Non-duality is the freedom, like carry on listening and carry on doing it, but you have to become really aware of your essence, which is this beingness, which isn't separate from all things, and simultaneously expose the seeking game, the constant exposing of what dynamics are going on.
Yeah. I mean, I remember, I don't know if, like, I know it's not your call really, but I seem to trust you for some reason and I ask you for advice. I don't know if it's a good thing or not, but I do. Do you still think therapy would be something that would be useful for me? Because I'm really in two minds about
It depends on what therapy. Um, it's, I would prefer like some sort of non-dual therapy, because basically talking about yourself and your story endlessly is not going to work, but there has to be an exploration, a constant pointing to what games are being played. And often when we're by ourselves and we do it by ourselves, we lie to ourselves a lot because it's more pleasurable. So then we tell a better story of ourselves. So we're not honest about what's actually happening. But when you see a therapist or when you speak with somebody regularly, they can keep pointing out those dynamics. There has to be an exposing, but it's very painful pointing out those dynamics. So I wouldn't just recommend any therapy, but a therapist that has non-dual background, and then also somebody that's maybe a bit more physical, because just sitting I don't think does it. I think sometimes when you're exposing these seeking patterns, there has to be some physical way to get it out of your body, because it's really uncomfortable. So when I was waking up, I used to do a lot of massage, a lot of tai chi, qigong. I used to also do acupuncture, and I used to do massage. I used to have a hot tub at the time, so I used to sit in the hot tub and it had massage pumps, and then I had a massage chair, so I was constantly like moving the body and encouraging that energy out of the body, because it's really stressful in a way becoming aware of the seeking patterns, because when you become aware of them, you're no longer going after the drug that satisfies that lack. So you're no longer going to get the love or get appreciation. So therefore you have to actually sit in the pain of the lack.
Yeah. Because
It's much easier if you feel not enough to just pick up a phone and talk to a friend and then feel better and feel validated by telling them your problems, or by talking about something that you both enjoy, or whatever it is. By relating, it just dissipates that energy. And more often than not, the body's going to keep choosing that. So that's why doing therapy is a good thing, or or even going on retreats, but keep exploring those dynamics. But also listening to that amness, because ultimately you're not your feelings. But some non-duality teachers just recommend totally ignoring the feelings, like the thoughts. But I've realized that from speaking, because I never did that bypassing feelings, because I always had such strong feelings. I notice that a lot of people then bypass the feelings, and they, even though they recognize the amness, they're still living in a lot of dishonesty, or not being honest, or lies. Not lies like they're intentionally lying, but they're not being honest with what's actually happening in them.
yeah,
So there's still a lot of
I probably,
seeking, but then they're sitting there going, yes, there's nobody seeking here, or there's nobody that wants anything here. But then there is still the energy of seeking, but they're not even aware of it, because then they've cut themselves off because society's cut them off. And then also non-dualities suggested ignore the feelings and ignore the thoughts, like concentrate on the amness. And just from 6 years now, or however many years it is from speaking, in one way that's a really beautiful teaching, but in another way I've seen a lot of people very out of touch of what's actually happening. So even though they might have a strong realization and a strong intellectual knowledge of non-duality, their body is still very much seeking, but they're cut off from it, so they can't feel it. So they even in a way feel peaceful because it's silent.
yeah.
But then you
Well,
can
I
see
think
it through their actions. So their actions can be uncompassionate or uncaring. And this is another reason maybe why I've been hitting home on morality lately, is because in this realization, when it's really integrated into the body is not going to be nasty. And some of the people that I've come across that it's maybe more intellectual, they're still playing quite nasty human games, like
yeah,
like being disrespectful, dishonest. Just I can't. So there's still a lot of that going on, but they're not even aware of it, because to them they feel peaceful, because they're just living in this kind of dead state, which is much more better than what they maybe had before, but it's still very cut off. And when there is that collapse of that separate entity that's always seeking to be free in time, the body's not going to be hating or doing nasty things in order to make people feel bad or play power trips. The body's just going to be doing its thing. It might hurt people unconsciously just by not being aware of situations or dynamics, or by not giving the other person what they want, but it's not going to be a nasty instrument anymore. It's not going to be acting out of hate. When there's that separate energy, that seeking energy, then it often's acting out of trying to feel better than the other person, or feeling superior to the other person.
yeah, yeah. That sounds like a bit familiar for me for a while. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, but also you have to just tell me when you need to move on to someone else, because otherwise I'll probably keep talking for ages.
Oh no, that's okay
But
at the moment. Just if anyone's watching, I'm having to do weird things with my arm, because my sound system isn't fully working at the moment. So people can see me doing this. You can't, Sam. I don't think you can see me. But
yeah,
the sound system, for some reason on this computer, when I speak to other people, it just gets louder and louder and louder, and then it will start making terrible sounds. So I have to keep bringing the sound down manually with my hand. So I'm speaking with you, and then also my hand has to keep clicking to bring the sound back again. So I look most probably weird that
okay.
I'm sitting here going dig dig dig. But I am listening to
You
you
need a
fully,
new
just doing.
computer or something.
Actually, you know, it's I've come to the conclusion it's not the computer. I thought it was the computer for a while. It's just modern technology and like Apple. Apple are a bit naughty. They always make things a bit difficult if it's not Apple or Mac program.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah. I see what you're saying.
so it's like it's I think it's more to do with that than anything else. But I can get around it and I will be getting more equipment to get around it, but it's like you have to keep adding equipment to get over these faults that are in the programming. But I don't even know if it is faults. I reckon Apple do it for more money to make sure you only buy Apple.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are good, but they know it.
Yeah, and they want you to only use Apple products.
Yeah, yeah. That's it. Just going back to something you said earlier about all
Yeah.
the different styles of non-duality teaching and
Mm.
stuff. That's something I was thinking about today because I've listened, I've had, read a lot of different stuff, listened to a lot of different people, and like, I don't know, is it, you're probably not going to like this question, but in your opinion, could you tell some other teachers that you feel like are actually awakened
Or
or not?
you know, I mean, I think I've done this in the past, but I mean, I don't really know. Like, you can never really tell what is happening in the other bodies. Um, but I also think, you know, that teachers have pros and cons. Like awakening, there's lots of different types of awakening, first of all. And then after the big awakenings, there's still processing that has to happen in the body. It's like the body has to catch up, and that might take whole lifetimes for the body to catch up with those energetic shifts. And the most
Okay.
important thing that I think that there is that energetic shift from being someone to that stillness. But then the body still has to catch up with that. Like the body still might have karmas or old thought processes of being separate still acting out, which I have happening. So I still have the digesting of that in a bodily level. And I think that most teachers do, to be honest with you, even Ramana Maharshi. And I think that also there's a part to it where it never ends because the body picks up new conditionings and those have to kind of get released again. So I do think that that's a
Yeah.
never ending thing. But the most important part is this energetical shift. And some speakers actually haven't had that energetical shift, they've just understood it intellectually. And
Yeah.
uh, and then and I think the way that you can tell it is it's like an energetic thing, and it's like they maybe express about love more. The ones that are more heady maybe express less about love, but that could just be conditioning. Like Muji, I beat up on him a lot, but I do think he's had the
Yeah.
energetical awakening. Like I beat up on him because I find the Indian thing funny, but at the same time, that might be a karma that's working out of Muji's body, still the Indian thing. But I do definitely think
Yeah.
he's had the energetical awakening. You can just see it in his eyes and just by the way he talks. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Cool.
so you can see. So, um, but I also do think that the Indian thing is really like I would
I
say that
noticed
is
this.
like an old karma that's coming out of his body, like an attachment to, and and at the end of the day, that doesn't really matter. The thing that matters is that energetical shift, and that's the important part. It's not the doing the Indian thing or the whole guru thing that matters. And everything in a way is perfect. Like it's happening perfect. So if you're attracted to a heady teacher that's not enlightened, then that's got its perfect part to play. That is exposing something, and at some point there will be a movement away from that whenever that energy that attracted you to them has come out of the body. Like there's no danger zones. It's not like anyone could go the wrong way because nobody's acting independently. So even if that happens, that's the perfect way of things.
Yeah. How about did you ever? I'm reading a book at the minute I really like by J. Krishnamurti. Have you ever read anything by him?
No, is he the older one, the one that died first?
Yeah, I think he's dead now.
Yeah, they're both
But
dead, but
really, like,
yeah. And if it resonates, that's the most important thing because you if you've not got passion for something, then you can't like forcing yourself into something isn't the way to go. So if you if you've got a passion for that way of speaking, then totally indulge it. I mean, you've got to go where the heart goes. That's what society's taught you. Is it's taught you the opposite. It's said, don't trust yourself, always trust someone else, and always follow your intellect. But if there's a passion for that speaker, then that's the way to go. And it doesn't matter if I
Yeah.
say they're rubbish or not rubbish. It doesn't, like, that doesn't matter,
No,
because
that's it.
it's got to be a following of that. But at the same time, there's got to always be an exposing of what's actually going on. So there has to be an exposing of those dynamics, and explore the dynamics and what you like and what you get from them. But at the same time, follow it. Like, any
Yeah.
exposure
That's,
to non-duality is better than none. I'm sorry, I'm a real fan of non-duality.
yeah, yeah. That's really complicated. Like what you said about that even, non-duality goes away, but it doesn't go away because you can still keep listening to it, but it stops doing something for you.
Yeah.
I guess I have to know where the reasons why but who knows why I'm listening to it? Like I could be
No,
doing
yeah.
something else right now,
Yeah,
but
and
I'm
don't,
not. I'm not.
yeah, but don't go too intellectual about it. Go to the feelings. So go
Right.
into, like, don't think about it too much. Like, go into the feelings, and you don't need to work it out, and it doesn't need to be done now. Just gently over time, keep seeing and exploring what you feel. And don't make any
Yeah.
conclusions. Just in every moment, expose it again. Like, we try to make a conclusion of this is why I've done things, or this is why, and that's not really important. It's about in the moment exploring what's going on. And every time, in a way, it's afresh, rather than keep fixing it or in a certain way. Like, we sometimes get into this mentality of we've got to work ourselves out, and yourself is always changing. You just have got to expose what's going on now. So right now, what do you feel like you're getting from it? Like, when you're reading the book later, what do you feel, what's it giving you? And you don't need to spend that much time on it, but just become aware of it. And you don't need to
Yeah.
summarize or conclude, just an exploration of what's actually happening in the body. What happens in your body when you read that book? And then you're like, oh, it relaxes me. Okay, so this relaxes me and it feels nice. And that doesn't mean stop doing it, or it relaxes me, therefore it's bad, but just an acknowledgement of that's what's happening. Most of the time we walk around just following pleasures and not even aware of it. We're not even aware of what we're doing. So, we might be in an abusive relationship, and the reason that we stay in an abusive relationship is because that's what's familiar to us, and our body might be hating it and not enjoying it, but because there's that the familiarness with it, there keeps being a repetition of it. But if there's an exploration of that, it will begin to stop happening, because you'll see the pain that it's producing. So it's always just looking at what's going on, but in the moment, don't make too much of a story about yourself or your feelings. It comes and it goes, and
Yeah.
it's different. It's always changing depending on the external and what's happening there. So right now, what does your body feel like? So not what you felt earlier or later, but what do you feel now?
Yeah. Right now, kind of a bit more comfortable.
Yeah,
Um, Still a little bit of tension in my stomach and below that as well. Like I don't know what's the word, bowel or something,
yeah,
bladder.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean that's the other thing. You see, I've always, especially when I was smoking and drinking and stuff, I've always got this pain almost in my neck. And I kind of have stopped feeling it over the years. I don't know if it's been there all my life or what, but I'm always pretty much uncomfortable in my body, and so maybe I've just stopped trying to feel it.
yeah, totally, totally. And the reason that you've become uncomfortable in your body, Sam, is because you went through this whole education system that made you sit, and you went through this whole conditioning as a child that made you do so many things you didn't want to do. So you just basically had to sit down and shut up, and the best thing that you could do was just cut off from what you're feeling in your body. You had so many years
Yeah,
of sitting in the classroom, sitting there, being told what to do, not being able to play, not being able to do your
yeah,
natural instincts, and so therefore everybody does it, and everybody's feeling pain in their body. It's so unhealthy to sit 9 hours or 10 hours in the office like people do, and the way they do it, and the most successful people in terms of money in society is the ones that are most detached from the way they feel, really. They've totally cut
Yeah.
off any pain from it. And the only way you're going to get rid of the pain is by becoming yourself again. So following Sam and following Sam's love rather than following fear and lack. And the way that you go about doing that is firstly listening to non-duality and remembering who Sam truly is, which is that amness, and that everything comes from that amness. And then also exploring what the false Sam is doing, what the illusion is doing, what the taught Sam is doing, what the lackful and fearful Sam is doing, what it's trying to seek for, and becoming aware of those dynamics. And sitting through the
Yeah.
pain to an extent, acknowledging the pain in the body and allowing it to come to the surface rather than trying to cut it off. So the pain in the neck, just giving it attention.
Yeah. I have this weird thing as well. It's just reminded me when you said that about feeling the pain, because I've heard you've started talking more recently about feeling the feelings and stuff.
Yeah,
Sometimes a lot of the time it'll just be when I remember something in the past, normally something that's I feel embarrassed by, probably a lack thing or some really uncomfortable memory. It's normally a memory, and like as I actually remember it, it kind of I try to feel the fear, but simultaneously to remembering it, as soon as it's remembered, I kind of sometimes I'll say something like making some noises and be like, oh, well, no, please no, or I'll just screw my face, and it's kind of like I don't know if that's blocking it off, but does it maybe make it harder to feel it because I'm kind of as soon as I'm feeling that uncomfortable feeling from the memory, I'm kind of I don't even know what I'm going to say, but I sometimes say things like, oh no, please no, or oh,
yeah,
kill me now, or weird things like that. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. It is cutting off from the feelings. And the thing is as well, those feelings haunt us while we feel like we don't want to feel them. In a way, they stay in play. There's not that many feelings that we have. We have a limited range of feelings as humans. And
Yeah.
basically, we never want to feel any of the negative ones. And because we don't want to feel any of the negative ones, say embarrassment or shame, we therefore cut them off. And what we do is we give ourselves an underlying anxiety by cutting them off, an underlying discomfort, which is just a hum. But what it does is it takes out the intensity of that feeling in the moment.
Right. Yeah. How can I get more when it comes up? Get deeply into it, or is that something
Yeah,
like what with therapy and that?
therapy or certain therapists. I mean, a lot of therapists aren't aware of this subject, and then I think therapy is kind of pointless. But they've got to have a bit of awareness of this subject.
Yeah,
But
there's a good one I could use, I think.
yeah, and so you can have somebody leading you, but also if by yourself, when that discomfort comes up, so say if you're in a room full of people and you feel shame or embarrassment, if you could just go to another room or go to the toilet and just give yourself 5 minutes and locate where you feel that in the body and sort of like encourage it, like almost
Yeah, I've heard you say this
like
before.
encourage it. Now this isn't for everybody, and like this is what I'm expressing to Sam now. This is why I say it to everyone else, because if you've been repressing your feelings for a long time, then you might need to do it in a safe environment and do it in a therapeutic environment. But if you feel like you can, so if you feel this shame, just let it come up and like flood your body so you feel it all over your body. And then it's in a way, it's like coming out. So when birds or animals feel stressed, they often have like a way of releasing it. So Khaleesi, after she's had a bit of a to do, although I really can't speak badly about her behaviour anymore, she's very good, but today a few times in the market she had a little bit of a growl at some dogs, and often what she does afterwards is she sort of shakes it off, like the body shakes, or she yawns, like she yawns it out. So when you're doing this, it's like bring it up to the max and just let it come up to the max, and any thoughts that you think about it aren't true. But obviously, if you've not felt your feelings for a very long time, then you might need to not do it at a party, but do it in your own room and give yourself quite a few hours to
Yeah.
sort of relax and have music, and because it can
Okay,
be
so
quite
maybe do it as
intense.
a thing.
Or do
Yeah.
it in therapy, therapy with someone, because when you've been cut off for so many years, if you then suddenly have a feeling, an intense feeling again, it can be overwhelming or shocking for people, because they are overwhelming feelings. But I really love my feelings now. They're like colour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because maybe I need to make more of a thing of it, like plan to do it, because I've been trying to catch the feelings as they come up, and it's only for that. Like, I don't, it seems like maybe you're right. I'm cut off. I don't have that many bad feelings apart from that underlying constant
Yeah.
uncomfortableness. When you come up like really intense,
Tension.
strong feelings, I try and catch them then. But like I said, I'll make a noise or something,
Yeah.
and then I'll then as soon as I've done that, it's like the feeling's gone, and I'll try and think about it again, but it's gone. If you know what I mean.
Yeah. You could spend time like evoking a memory that makes you feel really uncomfortable, but sometimes it's good to
Yeah,
let life do it, like to let life put you in a very uncomfortable situation, like in the sense of in
yeah.
relationships or
That's the thing. I was gonna like, especially the last few weeks now. I've been going through so much pain. Like I've been for a lot of years, maybe because of drugs and stuff. I didn't used to really get that emotional, but I've been crying and really feeling like I couldn't have felt any worse without dying, sort of thing.
yeah.
And I've gone through a lot, and I've always said to myself, "Oh, well, this pain is probably just like burning or something, and then I might wake up." But I'm not so sure, really. It just seems like I've gone through a lot of pain. I don't know.
I think that this is it coming to the surface. This is the reason why you have the underlying anxiety, is because of these repressed feelings. So I think it is coming to the surface. I think it's really beautiful.
Yeah,
But you sometimes might feel that you need a guide more. I can understand why you keep wanting to phone in and talk, because it is overwhelming when you feel them. And the trick is with feelings is never ever believe what they're saying. Be aware of what they're saying, but never believe it. It's just not true. You only feel like it in that moment, and then when it passes, you no longer feel like that. Feelings, the thoughts always try and wrap up the feelings. Oh, I've always felt like this, or it's always doom and gloom, or I'm never going to get over this.
yeah,
But none of that's true. But just do it in a more conscious way, as in being aware of what you're doing, that you're emotionally releasing. And you can read about it on the internet. You could find therapists. It's really good and
yeah.
beautiful.
Because I've heard you say that before as well, to hear what the feeling says,
Yeah.
and I've never been able to do that. But do you mean hear what the thoughts
Oh yeah. Well, the
around the
thought.
feeling
Yeah.
say?
That. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, because yeah, I got confused by that. I misunderstood it.
Yeah. In some ways, sometimes you can feel like the feelings are talking, but not. But
Yeah,
it's really just
yeah,
the thoughts. But you can feel like they're producing the thoughts, like I'm not enough, or I don't like this. And you'll basically find with all feelings that you can take them back to two basic feelings. They'll fall in one or two categories. So even if you feel shame or embarrassment or guilt, whatever it is, then these two basic feelings are fear and lack. And sometimes they cross over into both categories. So say something like shame, you're ashamed of something you did. That comes from that you are somebody, first of all, so that you are something, and that somebody that you are is not enough, and in comparison to other people it's done something bad and shameful. So it thinks of an action, and then it uses that action to feel like it's very low and that nobody else likes it. And this isn't even conscious, this thought process, but that's what the feeling's very quickly doing. So you have all these other people that are looking down on you, and then you feel ashamed of what you've done. But the separate self has imagined both realities. It's imagined you that feels shameful for something it's done in comparison to others. And shame can, not really shame, but there are still feelings that arise. Like I can feel embarrassed, say if I'm doing a talk and then at the end of the talk I look down, this has happened before, and I realise my trousers are undone, and I'm like, nobody told me. Like, and then suddenly your
yeah,
cheeks go. So these sort of feelings can happen, but what happens when you're separate is that it lasts, and then often you try to repress that, and then what it ends up being is an underlying just dis-ease all the time. So you feel these feelings, like
yeah,
actions that you've done that you feel shameful for, and they kind of last. It kind of makes up your sense of self. So therefore you're always trying to avoid being ashamed or doing anything shameful. So then you're always hindering your natural flow. You're always pulling back from your natural flow.
Yeah.
because you're afraid of that feeling. Like before, I'd have never been
Yeah.
able to do these talks on the internet. I'd have been way too self-conscious and embarrassed, and what would people think, and I'd just have so much feeling around it. Whereas now it's just the way it is. That's what Lisa does. Doesn't really get much energy.
Yeah. You wouldn't have been able to do them, you don't think?
No, I'm actually, my natural personality is a bit hermit and introvert. I know I don't seem like that, but that's because life requires me to be an extrovert when I'm doing these talks, and it just does that. But it's
Yeah.
not actually its natural inclination. And
Okay.
and and before, when I was identified, I had a strong aversion of doing anything like this. And I always wanted to, my role wanted to play submissive. So I wanted to be led by someone else. I wanted to have someone save me. That was the Lisa role. Or I wanted to be the saver, but it was like in relationship, I never wanted to be the person that saved people. I wanted to be saved. I wanted to save animals. In a way, I did
Yeah.
want to save other people because you're kind of playing both roles in your imagination, but mostly I was identified with being saved. So
Okay.
it wasn't, it just wouldn't be my personality to do this sort of thing at all. But it looks like it is now because I don't have any resistance or issues to doing it and talking and
Yeah, yeah.
exposing these sorts of things.
So when you were getting into non-duality, it was the same for you, really. You just wanted to get away from something as well.
Yeah, totally. Totally. I mean, I was an addict as well. I was bulimic, but
Yeah.
bulimia they consider more of an addiction than the other eating disorders, so it falls more in line with alcoholism, from what I understand, or what they had, what their knowledge was 15 years or 16 or 17 years ago.
I
So
can understand that.
I
Yeah.
was a yeah, because basically it gives you loads of endorphins doing that. You binge, so you get lots of endorphins, and then you feel really bloated. And then when you're being sick, it releases lots of endorphins. So it's like a drug. It both
Yeah.
ways, and you enjoy the sickness as well because the sickness is such a relief because you're so bloated. It's really bizarre. It seems like such a weird addiction, and it's a weird one to fall into. And oh my goodness, the shame I had in confessing that I was a bulimic. Like I would be like,
Really?
please let
Yeah.
me be anything else than somebody that makes
Oh
themselves
no.
sick. It was
Oh
so
yeah.
embarrassing. Like I remember, I would rather have been anorexic, like anything, than a bulimic. And I was for a little bit anorexic, but not very long. As soon as I discovered bulimia, I was like, woohoo! But it's so embarrassing to admit to people. Like I remember like saying it to my parents. I had to put like a cloth over my head to say it to them because I needed
Oh.
them to pay for therapy for me. So I had to tell them. I wouldn't have told them otherwise, but I was like, you're gonna have to send me to the Priory. Have you heard of the Priory?
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah. Did you go there then? Yeah.
I did. But then at the Priory, I was like,
Yeah.
I really wanted therapy, but they just put me on but it coincided with me leaving home, and so when I left home, it broke the habit of doing it. And then when I
Yeah.
went to the Priory, because I'd broken the habit from leaving home and the change of environment and dynamics, because I'd done it by myself, my psychiatrist wouldn't send me to therapy and just put me on like a pill that took away urges to do it, or pills that they thought.
Oh,
And I kept fighting with him. I used to go and see him every month. I want to go to therapy. I want to go for therapy. And he
yeah.
was like, no, no, you really don't need it. And I don't know. It's weird that he was like that. You'd think he'd want to sell it. So then I
Yeah. Yeah.
sought it myself. So then I went into. I was already seeking this sort of subject, but I went into Buddhism and meditation, and I started learning about it all myself and exploring. Yeah. But that was
Yeah.
so. It
Crazy, isn't
was
it?
yeah. So when I got into this subject, my body was very uncomfortable because I'd spent from the age of 10 to about the age of 19 basically abusing my body from eating disorders. So my body was physically ill, and my mentality was ill because there's a reason why a young person starts doing that. Like there's something that's really strong in their dynamics, which is basically abusing themselves so much and hating themselves so much. Like, I hated myself. Everything I found in society so awkward. I found being attractive, I found sexuality, everything so incredibly awkward. I found the idea of money overwhelming, like the idea that I had to support myself, like so much I found uncomfortable. I didn't get socializing. I felt too much pressure to talk and to be social. And
Yeah.
so so my way of dealing with that was this fixation on eating and purging and eating and purging. And then when I came off of that, I was really uncomfortable. So I had to go through, I then went through 5 years of Buddhism, where basically I sat and meditated so much. So I became really comfortable with my own company because I was so afraid of being alone because of the bulimia. So I'd
Ah.
sit and meditate and do the sensations, feel the body, feel the sensations, the discomfort. And it was really beautiful, but at times it was so incredibly painful after having such an extreme swing from being a bulimic and eating disorder for 10 years to then going into this meditation and sitting with all this pain and discomfort and the aches and pains that came out of my body. And then also the fakeness of the aches and pains, because a lot of the aches and pains were mind made, were in my imagination, but I only began to notice that from sitting and actually coming back to the experience, and how much, so much of it was created by my mind, and so much of my
Oh, you
thoughts
mean it
were,
wasn't really there?
yeah, it wasn't really there. I would sometimes be in meditation, so I'd do this certain meditation practices, and my legs felt like they were breaking, and I was in so much pain that I almost felt like I'd cry from the pain of it, and I felt like my legs had been broken from the pain. And I'd be desperate to finish the meditation, and every second I was like wanting the meditation to end. And then when the meditation ended and I moved my legs were fine. My whole imagination had just
Yeah.
made it up. It's really amazing what the mind does. And through this 5 years of meditation, I really began to explore the nature of the mind. And they were very much into meditation. And because I was quite fixated on, well, nothing in the flow I already realized will make me happy. And I'd had many awakenings, so I was fixated on this. I just really went for it. So I did so much meditation in those 5 years.
Yeah.
Like, I did an
Yeah,
hour,
maybe
at
that's
least an
something.
hour by
Yeah.
myself every day. And then I used to go on retreats where I'd do 10, 11 hours meditating a day. It was so
Yeah,
intense.
wow.
Yeah. It was really, really beautiful. And then I began to get into non-duality through the Buddhism. But even
Mm.
when I got into non-duality, I still did lots of sitting because I didn't
Yeah.
have any meditation practices anymore. But I would just sit there. So if I felt uncomfortable, I would just sit there and wait for it to pass, and I'd just become aware of the discomforts and where they were in the body and how the body worked.
Yeah.
It was intense, and I just kept exploring. I don't know why, but this body, this mind, just was determined that money, kids, family, nothing in the flow would satisfy me. That first of all, I had to find out the peace in me, the freedom in me. It would never
Yeah.
work the other way around. So it was just incessant. It was like fixated. Maybe the bulimia and the
This.
fixating on the bulimia was a good thing, because then it then it shifted from that to the fixation with freedom.
Yeah. Yeah, this is gonna sound really horrible, but it's really nice for me to hear how fucked up you were, because I always thought I was
I know you
I
can't
always thought I
you
was one of
can't
the most.
at least being a heroin addict is more dignified. I'm sorry, I know heroin addicts are going to disagree, than a freaking bulimic out of all the ones I got.
I don't understand how come you think that's so embarrassing though. I guess I try
But
not to judge people maybe, but
yeah, yeah, and you're right totally, because when you see somebody screwed up on drugs, then you're right. Like,
I don't. Yeah,
but none of it's
but
bad. None of
I
it's bad. I
totally
mean,
know what
just
you
the
mean.
way society is, people are so weird. The way that they stand on the tube and won't look in people's eyes, and like our whole society is weird. So ultimately, not. But at the time, I felt very ashamed of that habit, and I wanted to be any
Yeah.
other addict than a bulimic.
Yeah, yeah. You didn't like yourself at all.
Yeah, and then also I just found the fact that it was such a weird one, like making yourself sick. Like it's more understandable. I felt other drugs, but maybe that's very
Yeah,
understandable to people with a food drug.
yeah, yeah, I get it. I even know what you mean about being sick, because sometimes when I used to take drugs, they'd make me sick, and it was really nice to be sick.
Yeah,
I'd be looking forward to it.
yeah. You get addicted. People don't understand that about bulimics, that they're just as addicted to the sickness as they are to the binging.
Yeah, and yeah, I think most people can understand sometimes it's nice to binge a load of food, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
I
So,
don't know. But yeah, that always kind of held me up because yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I've been so fucked up. Like you said, I mean, I've been different to you, but I've had like drug problems, always like low self, as growing up and stuff, as like a young teenager and stuff, so self-conscious. I
yeah,
used to hate it, like especially to do with my body and stuff. I was feeling like I was too fat, and
yeah,
I don't know, I was just everything. I had really bad spots, and to do with relationships and everything, like I found it really hard to start getting into putting myself out there.
yeah,
My tendency was just to try and like hide away, you know,
yeah. But this is
and all
so,
sorts of other things. Like,
yeah, this is so beautiful that you begin to be honest about it, because this is when it really begins to change. And um, and it's beautiful that you had that, because if you didn't have that, then you wouldn't explore. If people can get away with mild discomfort and carry on living life and producing money and doing the regular, then they will. And in a way, you have to have these extreme situations, not all the time, but a lot of the time, in order to explore the nature of reality, because it's really, really scary questioning yourself. And it's really painful questioning your motives. In a way, it's so much easier taking the drug and being told that you're lovable and getting girlfriends or a family or money, or just taking any drug. It's easier to do than to actually sit with the pain of it, of feeling unlovable. But the only way to break it is to let it come to the surface rather than playing unconsciously. And always, when you're listening to awakening stories, in some way life snookered them and made them face up to the experience. And so it's really beautiful,
yeah,
Sam. And in a way, it does have to attract us Looney Tunes, even though we're not. I'm just joking, but it does have to, because if you could get away with it, if the person could get away with it, it would. And I'm beginning to notice with my friends, my childhood friends who are doing the kids and the whole normal, regular society thing, that they're beginning
yeah,
to open up to these things, because they're now getting to a place, a level of pain which is becoming unbearable. So their whole life they've done the work, they've done the boyfriends, and it's been good enough. And now they've got 2 or 3 kids, they're really beginning to find life hard. So I notice that they're beginning to be more open to this
yeah,
subject. But because they maybe had higher self-esteem, or they had a more balanced sense of self when they were younger, they didn't question it. But I notice now, particularly that they've got onto their second or third kid, that they're really beginning to
yeah,
find that hard. I can imagine it's really hard. And so therefore they're beginning to explore outside the box.
yeah. So maybe we were lucky to be
Screwed
so
up
fucked up in
younger.
the first place. Yeah,
Yeah, it happened in fast forward for us.
yeah,
Yeah. In a way,
yeah.
I
That's
mean,
really
in a
true.
way, I think that has an element of truth to it, because it made us really aware of what this was. It made us question what this was. Whereas
Yeah,
if you can get away with not questioning what this is and feeling good enough, then the person will, because it's too much to question what's actually
yeah.
going
I
on.
guess if I'd have felt better, I'd have never started looking into all this. I don't know.
Never, yeah. Nice, Sam. It's funny because I wrote that to
Nice.
you on Skype yesterday about the conversations, and now it feels like there's been a break and we really connected in the conversation. Isn't that really
Oh, that's nice.
sweet?
Yeah,
It really felt like a
that's
nice connection. I think we've talked for a long time as well.
yeah. I think so. Yeah, yeah. I think also I'm not sure, but my thinking is maybe because when I used to always ring up, apart from the first 1 or 2 times I'd rung up, it was when I was smoking weed every day, so that probably doesn't help me to really listen and connect, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Because
But now I feel like
it's,
my mind's a lot clearer.
yeah, yeah. That's most probably it as well. It really felt like we connected this time when we spoke. So nice.
Yeah, that's really, really nice to talk. Thanks, Lisa.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Sam. It was really lovely to talk. Thank
Could
you.
I just say one last thing as well to anyone? If there's anyone listening, there's probably not in Norfolk, England, or knows someone in Norfolk, England that might be interested in non-duality. I'd be interested to get in touch with them because I can't find anyone around here that is interested, you know?
Oh, nice. There was a young woman that I knew a few years ago that used to come to my talks, but I've lost contact with her now. But yeah, that's really nice. And they can write to me and I'll put them in contact with Sam.
Yeah,
Nice.
cool. Thank you. All right.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks. All right, Lisa. Yeah. Bye. Bye.
Bye. What a nice conversation.